Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, family and friends of Technion UK. I'm Paul Charney, Chairman of the Technion right here in London. It's a great honor to have you join us here this evening, but it's a real shame that we cannot be together. We have had to learn to adjust. The other thing that we have learned is that it will be science and knowledge that will save us. Tonight, we are honored to hear from our beloved Nobel laureate, Aaron Chikhanova. He will share his thoughts on biomedical ethics during these COVID-filled times. Professor Chikhanova will speak to us directly from the Technion in Haifa. Our goal this evening is to ask you to help us bring back talent to the Technion in Israel. We are talking about Technion graduates who are now renowned around the world doing their PhDs and who would like nothing more than to return to Israel and to be supported to continue with their groundbreaking work. Most of these students receive phenomenal offers around the world, but we need them back in Israel. We need them back at the Technion, and we need your support to help get them there. So we are honored to bring you this fantastic lineup this evening. But before we continue, please let us take a moment to remember Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He represented all those values and the ethics that the Technion hold dear. Let us remember him.
Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks was a highly respected international religious leader, philosopher, and award-winning author. With his towering intellect and remarkable communication skills, he was a sought-after media contributor promoting a more ethical and moral world. He served as the UK's chief rabbi for 22 years from 1991. He was knighted by Her Majesty the Queen in 2005 and made a life peer in 2009. As a strong proponent of the cooperation between science and religion, he held the Technion in high regard, and the university recently awarded him an honorary doctorate.
What an honor it is to receive such a doctorate from this institution. Few institutions in the world have contributed so much to shaping an entire country, an entire culture, an entire economy, and to have bestowed on Israel and humanity this string of creative achievements in science and technology. In the 106 years, I think, of your existence, the Technion has helped make Israel one of the most dynamic economies of the world. Its graduates represent 70% of the founders and CEOs of Israel's high-tech companies. It has helped Israel in itself become one of the high-tech giants in the world. It has the highest concentration of startups anywhere outside Silicon Valley, and it has pioneered in almost everything. Israel shows how you can be 70 years old, or in the case of the Jewish people, almost 4,000 years old, and stay young. And part of the reason it stays young is the Technion itself. Technion is a living example of tikkun olam, of mending a fractured world. And it does so by being at the very heart of Israel's high-tech economy, startup nation. Israel obeys this great command that Moses gave at the end of his life, Uvocharta v'chaim, choose life. And every single technological development Israel has developed, whether it's in medical technology, nanotechnology, agricultural technology, information technology, has always been life-enhancing.
The Rambam rules in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, Chapter 2, Halacha 2, that if you want to come to the love and fear of God, study science. You will then realize how vast is the creative power of God, how small we are, and how extraordinary it is that nonetheless God, who is wider than the universe, still lives within the human heart. And that's what I want religious leaders to say. Science has religious dignity to it, and God did not give us a brain simply not to use.
Before we begin, behind the ideas and hurdles, the trial and error, the striving and the greatness. Through ups and downs, there is a vision that never changes, the vision to do good. This is Technion. Where does vision come from? From people like you, enlightened minds who fill the future with care, guardians of all we share. Doing good by protecting this precious planet, harnessing energy resources to empower tomorrow, and learning from the scientific genius of nature. Doing good by advancing world health through revolutionary scientific insight, medical treatments, and life-saving technology. Doing good by opening all channels of data. Predicting future needs, anticipating the next wave of innovation, and keeping it all safe. Doing good by transferring the power of discovery from laboratory to marketplace, and sharing the culture of creativity across the world. Doing good with the vision to create something from nothing. Releasing the power of inspiration so that everything becomes possible. Doing good with Technion, where great minds come together to create a brighter future for all. Technion, from visionary education to a world of impact.
Good evening, friends in the UK. It is an honor for me to be with you for your Gala event, albeit by video. Thank you all for your willingness to support the Technion. The objectives of the Technion, defined in its constitution, are to disseminate knowledge through teaching, to advance research in pure and applied science and engineering, to serve the State of Israel with research and other appropriate means, and to serve the people of Israel. It is fair to say that we, the Technion, succeeded delivering what is expected of us and beyond. Technion graduates are heavily represented in the forefront of science and technology in Israel and worldwide. The innovations we develop benefit all of humanities. Who would have thought 100 years ago, when the Technion became Israel's first university, that it would one day become such an esteemed institute? Our abilities to excel depend first and foremost on the quality and uniqueness of our faculty members. This is where we need you. Like everything that is worth it, it requires beyond hard work a lot of support. The greatest asset of any university are its faculty members who inspire and lead our students so that they reach their maximum potential. We must keep up with other leading universities around the world. To do this, we aim to recruit 30 new faculty members every year to replace those who leave and to keep improving our student-to-faculty ratio. Through this recruitment, we also strive to bring home to the Technion some of the brightest minds and professors who are currently at other top institutions in the world. This recruitment drive is probably the worthiest investment for us and for you. We must recruit these people and bring others back home in order to maintain our position as one of the top-ranking universities in the world and the most important technological institution in Israel. By doing this, we will create breakthroughs and life-saving innovations. We need your help to do it. This is why we are asking you to be generous tonight. We need your support to bring the best minds to the best institution of its type in Israel. We are dedicated to the creation of knowledge to benefit all humanity, all of us, our children, and the State of Israel.
Hello and good evening to everyone from Cambridge. I'm very happy to be here at the Technion Gala dinner. I was brought up in sort of a Technion family with both my parents Technion graduates. For me, it was almost natural to proceed in this path of science and technology. And I ended up doing all my degrees from bachelor's to PhD in the electrical engineering department at the Technion. I focused on microelectronics and nanoelectronics research. And by the time I was done, I was looking to enhance these directions. And I went to the materials department in Cambridge to study smart materials, kind of materials that couple different physical properties and can help you, for example, harvest mechanical energy and turn it into useful electrical energy. My experience here and the interactions I had here with these world-class scientists, from the level of students to the level of professors, these could all be brought back and allow me to grow as a scientist and implement that when I opened my lab back at the Technion. For me, there was always the intent of coming back to Israel as an academic, taking all the experience I can to help me grow as a researcher back in Israel. The First Steps program, I see it as a very important part of the decision to come back, of course, but also enabling every researcher coming back to establish a lab that could succeed and that could have world-class output. And of course, you have to have that investment, initial investment in the lab to build it in order for that to happen. I think it's very important to encourage scientists with the relevant and timely experience to come back to Israel and into Israeli academia. And that what makes the First Step program crucial for the success of that process and to enable these scientists then to enhance the skills of all the people around them, so students and of course other scientists.
Hello to all our UK friends. I'm speaking to you from the Technion, Haifa, Israel, in the Biorobotics and Biomechanics Lab of the Mechanical Engineering Department. My research focuses on biomechanics and applied wearable technology and how we can help people with musculoskeletal problems with motion analysis and wearable technology to improve their function, their motor patterns, and their quality of life. I was born in Albany, upstate New York, and made Aliyah with my family to Israel when I was a young girl. After my military service, I continued to MIT to study towards a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, which ended up transferring to the Technion and finishing it here in the biomedical engineering department of the Technion. I then continued to my master's and my direct PhD program in mechanical engineering of the Technion, and then went to Stanford to do my postdoc there in mechanical engineering and biomechanics. After that, I came back to the Technion, which is where I am now establishing my own lab in biomotion and wearable technology in the biomedical engineering department. Even though I had the opportunity to go to an academic institution in the United States, I decided to come back to the Technion, which offered a very generous startup package where even my professor at Stanford was like, wow, that's the startup package you get at the Technion, I would go for it. So I decided to come back to the Technion, to the biomedical engineering department. Moving from the United States to Israel is never easy, and the First Steps program helped me. They helped me with establishing my new lab, my dream lab in the biomedical engineering department. They helped with shipment costs and also with flight costs and even with housing. The new faculty housing here at the Technion is great, and me, my husband, and my daughter live there, and we found a home here at the Technion. As a female scientist and engineer, I feel that the Technion is encouraging more and more female scientists to come back as new faculty members and to join as undergraduate and graduate students, where their numbers are improving and in graduate studies are about 50-50. The First Steps program really helped me come back financially to the Technion. I know personally of a few friends in the United States or Europe where this type of program would really help them come back. And this program would also help the Technion in returning these great academics back home. I wanted to wish you all a great evening and to thank you for your generosity.
Professor Shechanover, Professor Herskog, Professor Rose. Your discovery of a system for controlled protein degradation in cells has fundamentally changed our way of thinking about protein degradation.
It is a pleasure to join the Technion's friends here in the UK and to honour Rabbi Zach's memory alongside you. Rabbi Zach was an honorary graduate of yours because he was a beacon of wisdom, not just to the Jewish world, but to all humanity. Like Rabbi Zach's, Technion also is a beacon of wisdom, from its key role in the establishment of the academic world in Israel to the leading research in so many fields. Our world needs the Technion and its distinguished researchers, including Professor Shechanover, a Nobel winner. And I know you will continue to make a difference. For all you're doing, I thank you. And I want you to know that Israel thanks you. I wish you all success.
אוניברסיטה לוקחת פי 10 אליה.
Good evening, dear friends of the Technion from the UK and around Europe. It is our great pleasure to be with you this evening, broadcasting live from Haifa. I am Alon Wolf, the Vice President for External Relations and Resource Development at the Technion, and a professor in the Faculty of Mechanical and Biomedical Engineering. I welcome you to this very special gala event held on a very special date. Earlier today, December 10th, the Nobel Prize Award ceremony was held in Stockholm, Sweden. How appropriate it is that our keynote speaker is one of our very own distinguished Nobel laureates. Tonight is also the first night of Hanukkah, when we light the first of 8 candles whose light symbolizes freedom and hope. Linking these events, I invite distinguished research professor Aaron Shechanover, who won the 2004 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, to light the Chanukiah. Professor Shechanover will then deliver his talk, Bioethic at the Interface Between Biomedical Technology and the Sick Human Patient, the Challenges and Those Added by COVID-19. We invite you to write your questions to Professor Shechanover in the chat area, and he will answer them right after his talk. Aaron, should we light the Chanukiah?
In a minute. Well, Good evening, the UK and wherever you are, scattered all over the world. My name is Aaron Chikanover, and I am a physician by education and a scientist by hobby. And I'm a member of the Faculty of Medicine, of the Rappaport Faculty of Medicine of the Technion, which you can see now in the first slide, the beautiful white building on the lower left corner that sits just on the Bay of Haifa. Today's lecture that will be preceded by some parascientific subject is going to be, I think, unique in the sense that as a scientist and engineers coming daily to our laboratories, we are mostly busy with technical problems, trying to develop antibodies. Some people are developing vaccines to the COVID-19, trying to solve scientific problems, and even in medicine, we are thinking about technical problems. But at the end of the day, we should know and should remember very well that our customer, either it's the patient in the hospital or anywhere, is the human being. And in the case of medicine, it's the sick human being. And therefore, while handling a sick human being, there are many ethical issues that are arising. Can we make experiments on human being? From time to time, it's necessary. Think about the clinical trial that we are running nowadays on the COVID-19 vaccine. So I collected for you, just out of some thoughts, some ethical issues that are related to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are going to discuss them in brief. And then if time will allow, I will expand a little bit to the revolution of personalized medicine. And again, just its bioethical aspects. We are not going to touch it all on any technologies. And at the very end, I'll tell you what's going nowadays a little bit, just give you a little bit of a teaser of what we are doing currently in my lab. So a tribute was paid already to the late former chief rabbi of the Jewish community in the UK, Jonathan Sachs, who just passed away. I came to know him quite well. I visited him in London several times. And actually, you saw already in the introductory video clip that he got an honorary degree in the Technion 2 years ago. And part of the events during this ceremony was a dialogue that I conducted with him, moderated by Professor Karl Skorecki. And you see here some memorable photos from this really exciting event. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs was, as was mentioned already, a truly unique Jewish leader. Part of the dialogue dealt with some of the problems that we are dealing tonight, bioethical issues in medicine in light of the Jewish halacha. But I think that Jonathan symbolizes more than anything else the thinking that being a Jewish scholar is not mutually exclusive from being also a secular scholar, from being a scientist. Being a scientist does not contradict being a religious person, believing in any God that you just pick up, being a productive citizen and contributing citizen of society. While this may be heard as just natural, many religious Jews and many religious leaders mostly, and in particular in the state of Israel, don't accept it. And they see that living secular life, educating their children in modern education, preparing them for living in the 21st century is completely exclusive, mutually exclusive to living scholarly Jewish life. And, you know, I'm not going to delve into this problem, which is a major problem for life in Israel and worldwide. But I think that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs was truly a clear voice for this concept and for this idea. And I think that the entire Jewish community worldwide and the entire world will miss him sorely. So that's my personal encounter and lesson that I took with the many encounters that I had with Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Well, today, as was mentioned already, is also the 10th of December, and according to the will of Alfred Nobel, who died in on his name, according to his will, was first awarded in 1901. The award is awarded on December 10th, the day of his death, in the anniversary day. And indeed, today, as was mentioned by Alon, though virtually, the Nobel Prizes for 2020 were awarded in Stockholm. I must tell you that my heart is with the awardees of this year, because they truly missed an unbelievable, life-memorable experience of being in Stockholm during this whole week of events. So today is 16 years to our Nobel Prize, to the prize that was given to Professor Ernie Rose, Professor Avram Hershko, my mentor, and myself, for the discovery of the ubiquitin system. And at the very end of my talk, I'm going to give you a little bit of what's going on with the prize. So first candle of Hanukkah, and the 16th anniversary of the Nobel Prize, an absolutely appropriate date for such an encounter with you guys in the UK, though I'm awfully sorry that we have to do it virtually, and instead of talking to you directly, I'm talking to a nice television screen that is standing in front of me. And this is the Nobel medal and the Nobel certificate and the will of Alfred Nobel. And I just want to draw your attention to one item, or to one part of the Nobel medal. So on the front side, there is the face of Alfred Nobel, the day of his birth and the day of his death. But on the other side, there is something very interesting that is pertaining to what we are going to talk about tonight, and to science and nature in general. You're seeing, by the way, this is my medal, and how do you know? Because if you look at the rare side, with the two ladies, you'll see the inscription of my name at the very bottom. It says H. Icanover and Mille Mille 4 in Latin letters, which is the year that we were awarded the prize. But forget about this personal item, and look at the two ladies. On the right side, you see a lady that, if you look carefully, on her right side, it says nature, or natura in Latin. On the left side, there is another lady that, if you look at her left side, you see the word scientia, or science. So there are two ladies, one represents science and one represents nature, the natura. So what's going on? The right lady takes the shawl, she unveils the face of the left lady. This is science. The role of science is to unveil the secrets of nature. But Mother Nature doesn't easily give up on her secrets. You see that she is holding in a horn, in a cornupia, all the secrets very close to her chest. So scientists have to work very hard in order to unravel the secrets of nature. So this beautiful medal and the two ladies, as were designed by Thornberg, the Swedish artist, reflects actually what we are all over the world, in all the universities, are doing daily, trying to unravel the secrets of nature, because we are curious, but also in order to improve and benefit mankind wherever people are. So, to our subject. So let's talk briefly on some ethical issues arise during the corona pandemic. So the first one is treatment priorities. In Israel, I remember in the first wave, we are now encountering the third wave of sick patients. There was a big concern about the number of ventilators and the number of teams, of expert teams, of intensive care unit teams that will be able to treat people that are on ventilators. There was kind of concerns, mostly distributed by the government, that there will be tens of thousands of people that will need respiration assistance, but there is only a paucity of instruments, and even a greater paucity of expert teams. So whom to respire, whom to put on the ventilator, and whom not. Here is a very important ethical issue. So initially it was decided that aged people like me should never get the privilege to get on a ventilator. Then there was a huge protest that this was the single criteria, and it was gradually broadened and changed, taking into consideration also pre-morbid state, background diseases, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, whatever the criteria are going to be, If we decide not to put a person on the ventilator, if we want to really call it in two short words, it's a death sentence. Doesn't matter that he's going to pass away in a month. Who are we to decide that 1 month in the living with the family, with a loving family, doesn't worth the effort of trying to rescue him? So this is a very heavy question that we have to decide who will live and who will die. Remember the prayer of Netane Tokef in Rosh Hashanah, Mi yichyeh u'mi yamut, who will live and who will die. And you see here that in Italy, people in Milan, in North Italy, when the pandemic was killing numerous people that didn't even get to the hospital, physicians faced really this question. In New York too. I'm not sure about the UK, but here you see an extremely heavy question. The other issue is that we were all busy with the COVID. Everybody was concerned about COVID. And we completely neglected other subjects. We completely neglected other diseases. Cancer didn't take a sabbatical. It didn't take a weekend off. It didn't take a holiday off. Climate change, that is probably, if you ask me, to my poor understanding, is the greatest threat on our very existence, on our very life on this planet, stopped. We didn't deal with it. We didn't try to handle and to control emission of greenhouse gases. Everything stopped, and it had a price. So look at this cartoon where people are looking at the news about COVID, but meanwhile, climate change is going to drown them in a stormy ocean. And you know, we had a short gain with climate change where people didn't drive, where they didn't fly, so there was a little bit of drop in emission of greenhouse gases, but then it increased again, and even to a higher level during the pre-corona time, because we are driving now our cars. Nobody dares to take a bus. Nobody dares to take a train. So this is one reason, but there are many other reasons that the situation with climate change has worsened, and to the opinion of many experts, in an irreversible way. The pandemic of hunger, you know, the famine in the East Horn of Africa, different diseases in Africa, AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, scourge. So you see that all these are issues that are came up, and they're all waiting for us. I'm quite optimistic about the fate of this current pandemic. It's going to be defeated, no doubt. England actually was the first country in the world to start immunization vaccine only yesterday. One of the first people to be vaccinated is William Shakespeare, not the real William Shakespeare, not the original one. No, well, he's real, but not the original one. But and then a nice lady of 92 years old. Israel will start vaccinating its citizens probably next week or in 2 weeks. And we know how to make vaccines. You know, there are 196 or almost 200 companies that are making vaccines. Many of them are already in the front line, from AstraZeneca in Oxford in the UK to Pfizer to Moderna. The Chinese now have their own vaccine that they try to spread all over the world, to disseminate all over the world. Russians have Sputnik 5 and many others. We know the technology. We know how to do it. And in a short time, I'm quite optimistic that the flames will be extinguished. But as I said, cancer hasn't taken a sabbatical. Climate change and many other issues will come back, and even in a more severe state than we left them a few months ago behind us. So this is about the other subjects. And now let's talk about a subject that is a very touchy one, and that's vaccination. And again, we are not going to talk about the technology of vaccine. We are going to talk about the ethical issues related to vaccine. Of course, one of the main questions that people are asking me, even just before we convene, are you going to take the vaccine? Everybody is concerned about side effects. Everybody is waiting that somebody else will take it. Why? Because it was developed, I wouldn't say in a haste. I don't blame either Pfizer or Moderna or AstraZeneca for a haste, for negligence. Absolutely not. But it was developed much faster than we are used to in the drug market. Typically, developing a drug takes several years. Bringing a new drug to the market is something of 5, 7, 8 years, depend on the drug. And here, within 9 months, the race started. Actually, it's not even 9 months. The race started sometime along February or March, and we are at the beginning of December, 8 months, and we have a drug already on the shelf, ready to go. People are taking it. This is really unprecedented. So people are a little bit concerned. So this is the main issue, gaining the trust of the public in order to vaccinate most of us. And even before this vaccine was developed, there is a huge anti-vaccination movement in the world, especially in the United States. And you can see here, I just collected from you, from the journals, from the periodicals, some of those advertisements, so-called, quote unquote, trust God, not vaccines. The vaccines are going to kill more people than the COVID itself. And there is a huge movement against vaccination. And it's really dangerous, because if people will not get vaccinated, we shall never be able to cut the chain of infection. It's even selfish. Think about a kindergarten that has 20 kids, and one mother objects that her kid will get the vaccine. Well, that's nice of her. It's very nice of her, because the kid, the single kid in the kindergarten, will be protected from getting infected by the other 19 vaccinated kids. They are vaccinated, so there will be no spread. But if 10 mothers will decide not to vaccinate their kids, then the infection will not stop. And they will transmit it to one another, to the family members, and so on and so forth. So being selfish and relying on some other people to take the vaccine, this is simply not fair. And I can tell you, not justified medically. It's not justified medically. Now, what are the reasons that people are objecting vaccines? You know, if we are looking at the vaccines history, it's a great success. It's probably one of the greatest success stories in modern medicine. Think about polio that was eradicated. I remember growing in the 50s, my parents shivered to the spine that I'll get, my neighbors got polio. Typically, it was a kind of a light disease like corona, but those that did not recuperate got paralyzed. And I remember still very well the iron lung. People were put in an iron lung to live there for the rest of their unfortunately short life. And the iron lung kind of went via cycles of vacuum and pressure in order to expand and contract their chest, so they'll be able to take air into their lungs. And at the end of the day, these people couldn't survive and died. And then Jonas Salk and later on Alfred Sabin developed very efficient vaccine, and the disease was eradicated. But it's not only polio. Think about mumps, think about rubella, think about measles, think about plague, think about all those diseases that were eradicated from the face of earth by vaccine. I would say that along with antibiotics, you know, you cannot compare apples to pears, but this is one of the biggest achievements of humankind, not just medicine and science. And here comes, unfortunately, in your country, in the UK, Andrew Wakefield, who is a physician, a pediatrician, a gastroenterologist, and says out of nowhere that vaccination, especially against the trio of diseases, the measles, mumps, and rubella, causes autism. So can you think of mothers that has to take the kid to the clinic to take a routine vaccine, and in the background she might think that the boy or the girl will develop autism? Well, I'm not going to, because of lack of time, I'm not going to go into Wakefield reasoning behind, but not only that he's a physician, but he published it in the most important, or one of the most important medical periodicals, in The Lancet. So people believed him initially, but then it didn't make any sense. And billions and billions of dollars were invested in clinical trials, and you can just read the titles, that there is no linkage between the vaccine or between the preservative and autism, nothing whatsoever. And I brought you just a handful of papers that completely demolish, abrogating this kind of malicious thought, of malicious theory that this vaccination leads to autism. So it took him about a month to sit in his home and to write a book of 200 pages, and it cost him probably the electricity in his home or the water bill or whatever, and then it took society billions of dollars in order to nullify it and to say that there is nothing there. But the damage is done, and the damage is irreversible. People don't read this. People read the New York Times. People read the Times in London. They read the Guardian. And he showed it up, and he came up in the titles, in the headlines of all these newspapers. The damage was awful. And even when popular books were published, like The Doctor Who Fooled the World that you see here, it didn't help much, and the damage has done. But he is not the only one that did the damage. Even the Japanese government. Somebody somehow spread a rumor in Japan that the immunization against human papillomavirus that causes uterine cervical carcinoma in women is causing movement disorders. So the girls that are being immunized, and basically the disease was eradicated, the human uterine carcinoma in the young generation has gone forever, and it's a devastating, fatal disease. All of a sudden, the government of Japan, based on nothing, advertises and says that the immunization causes movement disorders. Then, of course, it was stopped immediately. The immunization rate went from more than 90% of young girls to zero, basically to zero. And I can tell you it happened in 2013. Until now, 2020, 25,000 Japanese women were contracted uterine cervical carcinoma. 5,000 of them are already in the cemetery. Who pays for it? Who takes responsibility? Who is there to be punished? What a damage, what a disaster. So just to give you some idea about how fake news can damage not only the achievements of science, but really kill people, kill people. Autism is a disaster, but people are not dead. Here in Japan, 5,000 women paid with their lives. Now, let's talk a little bit about vaccination, because vaccination is around the corner and it really deserves special attention. A poll was carried out in the United States and asking people who will take the vaccine against COVID-19, who objects it, and who still hasn't made up his or her mind. And you see the numbers here. The dark brown are the pro, the light pink are the against, and the middle red are the neutral ones. And if you look at the greatest number, you see that the black population has the majority of people who are objecting. 40% are objecting. Now, why is it that the people in the United States that are hit more by pandemic, and the pandemic hit much more this minority in the United States, are those that are against it, against something that is going to rescue them, to help them? Well, you all know that this minority in the United States are more poor than any other ethnic groups. They are discriminated. They are heavily discriminated. Nowadays, much less, but there are many live black people that remember very well the heavy discrimination that still occurred during the Kennedy administration. He had to send his brother, Robert Kennedy, the Ministry of Justice, in order to lift the discrimination and to allow busing in Alabama of white and black people. So we are not talking about Columbus Day. We are not talking about old Greek or Roman history. We are talking about the early 1960s. So they mistrust the government, and they have good reasons for that. And I want to give you a more thorough, sad example. This is called the Tuskegee experiment. And the Tuskegee experiment lasted for 40 years. Again, not in the 19th century, but in the middle of the 20th century, 1932 to 1972, when President Clinton stopped it and apologized later on. It was stopped before President Clinton, but he apologized later on to the black population of the United States. And in the Tuskegee experiment, physicians and scientists, out of curiosity, decided that they want to follow the fate, the evolvement of syphilis naturally, with knowing that the patients are sick, knowing that they can be treated by drugs, knowing that in the initial phase of the disease, antibiotic can be given, but nevertheless, they prevented treatment of these people in order just to see how the disease is spreading from the genitalia to the body systems, all the way to the brain, and killing the patient at the end of the day. You know, I don't have words even to describe this so-called human experiment. It was carried out in the village of Tuskegee. 400 black people were told that they are going to be treated for something that they call the bad blood disease. They were not treated. They were given air, water, nothing. And when they went to the military, when they were drafted to the military, even the military that didn't know about the experiment said, hey guys, you need to get treated, you have syphilis. So the military actually discovered the experiment that was going on without these people know what's going on. I don't have to add even a single word to tell you why just this single experiment can completely demolish, can completely destroy any trust that this population has in the government. Now the vaccines have other issues, you know, supply of vaccines to different countries. There was a discussion nowadays, I believe that there will be enough production capacities of all the companies to make enough doses, enough aliquots to immunize all those they want. But then you have to buy it. And some countries can afford it and some countries cannot afford it. So what we are going to do, to leave the African countries aside, not immunized, aren't we all, the rich countries, going to make a coalition? Actually, such a coalition was established. It's called CONVAX, and to help them. So this is one issue. Another issue is, of course, an ethical issue. Think about the experiment that AstraZeneca or Pfizer or Moderna did. What did they do? How do we know that the vaccine is safe and it's efficient, that it's really vaccinated? They took 30,000 people and vaccinated them, and they took 30,000 people and gave them placebo. Placebo is water, for that sense. Well, it's not water, it's a salt solution, so there will be no pain during the injection. And they followed how many of each group getting infected naturally. You know, people get infected. In the UK, you know that people get infected, and in Israel, unfortunately, too. And they found that out of the 30,000 people, I don't remember the exact number, only 10 people that got the vaccine were infected in this group, while 100 people were infected in the group that did not get the vaccine. And even the 10 people that got infected got only a mild disease compared to severe disease that some of the 100 people got. And then they say, okay, the efficiency of the vaccine is 90%, 10 versus 100. Well, but now we know that 30,000 people got nothing. And they have names, and they have addresses, and they have ID numbers, and they have families. Shouldn't we go to them and tell them, guys, you got nothing. Now we are volunteering, the companies, to vaccinate you. You volunteer to be part of an experiment. You volunteer to sacrifice your health on the altar of society. Don't you deserve some payment for that? Now you are, doesn't society owe you something for you volunteering to this experiment that we didn't know the results ahead of time? This is one moral issue. Another moral issue is a purposeful challenge. No, are we going, and there is a heavy discussion about it, to take a group of people, to vaccinate them, and then to challenge them with live virus? And you tell me, you may ask me why it's important. Why should we do it if we can do it naturally like the company did it? Well, it's very important because we can start the experiment on the same very day with the same group of people and follow them a long time, follow what's going on, knowing whether they are developing a severe disease, a mild disease. We can do it on population at risk. We can take children, we can take women, we can take sick people, and we can get a much better, this is a much more controlled experiment than the random one that I just described to you. Another issue that is still under discussion. So you see, just talking about vaccination, see what's going on, how many ethical issues are there beyond the technological one. Another issue that came up is the infodemic, or the avalanche of misinformation and disinformation. We were all exposed to it. We are all using, where is my telephone? Oh, it's somewhere there. We are all using this little machine called cellular phone that connects us to all over the world instantaneously. and we can listen and see and get messages and send messages via the social networks. And people out of whatever motives behind are doing all kinds of strange, I would say even criminal things by disseminating fake news and wrong information. And many people cannot judge whether it's correct. I myself cannot judge that every piece of information that I see is correct or has a base in reality, has a foundation in reality. And it caused a huge damage. And I'll bring you just two examples of two celebrities. One is the outgoing president of the United States, who I will not, New York Times counted the number of times that he lied. And they came out to the number, which is unbelievable, 24,000 times during a 4-year term in the White House. You divide it by 1,200 days, more or less 1,400 days. So it comes to about 20 lies a day, something like that. But let's forget about him. And he came from whatever reason, not being a pharmacologist, not being a physician, that hydroxychloroquine, a drug that is used successfully for treating malaria, is very efficient for the pandemic, for the COVID-19. Why? God knows. But, it's the president of the United States, and many countries used it, and it was tried. But remember, when you are using one drug, you're not using another drug. And if the drug is useless, then at the same time, you could have used a useful drug rather than a useless drug. So the damage has done. And it took the WHO, again, the World Health Organization, a big experiment called Solidarity, to test whether hydroxychloroquine is indeed working. And not unexpectedly, it is not working. But the damage has been done. And our admired lady, Madonna, told us much ahead of time, months ago, that there is already a vaccination, but it's concealed by the rich people of the world, by the chairman of Microsoft and by the rich, other rich people, by Warren Buffett and many other rich people. Why? Because they already vaccinated themselves and they want to conceal it from the other people. Again, I'm not going to go into any details. Why did she do it? But I can tell you one thing. Madonna has 50 million followers. So no doubt they read what she said. But me or my good fellows, the scientists and the physicians, have scanty followers, can count it on one hand, 10 hands, whatever it is, orders of magnitude less than Madonna has. So you can imagine this doesn't make any damage. But again, it's shaming these people who are, many of them are philanthropists that are supporting science. Certainly Bill Gates is one of the greatest philanthropists, along with Warren Buffett, supporting science, supporting measures, development of measures against malaria that hit Africa and so on. So why to shame them? So you see, we are in a very problematic world, and I think that now we need to change direction. And I will not again read you all what's going on. I hope that President Biden will change the direction of the United States. And the United States is really under a disaster. I think that yesterday they crossed the 3,000 deaths a day, 3,000 deaths a day. And we need really, if you look at the upper left corner, to make science our co-pilot. Science is the only solution out, and you will see how the scientific solution of development of vaccine will take us out of this nightmare. And forget everything else. We need to separate, to put a sharp knife and to cut away politics from science. And we should let scientists and physicians do their job without any outside effect. The last one is, of course, when people are in trouble, all kinds of prejudice that are always floating underneath the thin shell of the egg are coming out and erupting. And that's inequality and discrimination that we should call racism. It started at the beginning of the pandemic in the United States, in Minnesota, when we all saw the cruel, brutal murder of George Floyd by a black man. We just talked about black people. In Minnesota, how the policeman pushed his knee against his neck, and while he was crying for his mother, getting suffocated for lack of oxygen, he died. And it erupted a huge storm in the world, that Black Matter lives and huge movements. And people started to discover that while they thought that they are free from racism, they are nevertheless racist. And shamefully, the scientific community, the kingdom of objectivity, well, we are scientists, we believe only in facts, found itself in the eye of the storm. And I just cut from you two papers that showed up in the most leading scientific journals, in Nature and in Cell, telling us, yes, we are discriminating. Well, we are not suffocating people to death, but we are taking less black people into our community. If you go into some institutions, you will see that the black people are mostly the cleaning people or the service people. If you count minorities in any country, forget about the United States for a minute. You count women. Think about women. Why do we have to go to colored people? Think just about women, the discrimination of women in academic societies, in authorship, in publication, and so on and so forth. So to our shameful feeling, and to, the mirror was put in front of our eyes to tell us, the scientists, yes, you are racist too. So I think that the pandemic taught us a lot of lessons about ourselves and about our fellow human beings, our neighbors, our friends, and even the people that we don't know. Let it be telling the truth, being transparent, not discriminating, taking into consideration their needs, the vaccine, convincing them that it's good to do it or it's bad to do it, whatever the matter under discussion is, and so on and so forth. Let me just move very quickly to broaden a little bit the ethical issue, and to tell you a little bit about what's going on in medicine in general these days. And this is all rooted in what I think is the greatest discovery, a UK discovery of the early 50s by two wonderful scientists, Francis Crick and Jim Watson. Francis died several years ago. Jim is still alive. They discovered the structure of the DNA, and by that they discovered also the secret of genetics, how we inherit our characteristic to the next generation. Not only we, human beings, but how cats make cats and dogs make dogs, and so on and so forth. And this was an amazing discovery. And if I think about Nobel Prizes, I have a very good friend, another Nobel laureate. He told me, who called to congratulate us on the day that we received the announcement, and he told me, Aaron, the Nobel class of laureates is not different than any class you have ever studied in the world, in your life. Let it be your kindergarten class, let it be your elementary school class, let it be your high school class. You will find that there are, the prominent one and the less prominent one. Well, and he said it on Nobel laureates. If I am being asked what is the most important Nobel Prize ever given in medicine, I don't go to chemistry or physics, but even in chemistry, because chemistry belongs here, in my opinion, there is no doubt that this is the discovery, by far. So on their discovery, modern medicine is completely based. And we are moving now from one type of medicine, which is the canonical medicine, to another type of medicine, a complete movement. We are turning 180 degrees. We are moving to personalized or precise medicine from the old canonical medicine to personalized or precise medicine that is also predictive, preventive, and participatory, and I'll explain it in a minute. The new medicine will be all based on our DNA. You see here the double helix that was discovered by Watson and Crick, that is the future of our drugs. And the reason is that until now, medicine of today was kind of a pajama medicine, or I called it one-size-fits-all medicine. What does it mean? Pajama is something that we don't care much about it. When you walk out to the store to buy a pajama, there are only 3 sizes that you'll find in the store: small, medium, and large. And the rest, the rubber band will accommodate you. But when you are going to tailor a suit, you are going to the tailor, then there is not 3 sizes. There is your size. It has to be measured and remeasured until it sits like it should sit. And this is the difference between the 2 types of medicine. In the old medicine, in the pajama type medicine, let's take breast cancer, let's take prostate cancer, let's take any disease. We jumped on the disease with heavy cannons because we didn't understand the mechanism. So we irradiate the patient, we treat them with chemotherapy. We are shooting at the patient with a heavy cannon on something that may be like a fly that walks on the wall. It's unjustified to use this heavy armamentarium. And the result is the result. The result is that people don't respond. And if you take a group of patients, sorry for that. If you take a group of patients, any group of patients, that on one day they are being discovered as having any disease, prostate cancer, breast cancer, and you start the gold standard treatment, irradiation, surgery, chemotherapy, and you follow them for 5 years, what happens is that in 5 years they are divided into 2 groups. Some of them were deteriorating and become either chronic patient or unfortunately died, and some of them are cured. But at the day of the diagnosis, we cannot tell who will belong at the end of the 5 years period to each group, the lucky one or the less lucky one, because we don't know what's going on with the disease. We tell the patients, if the patient is daring to ask the doctor, doctor, am I going to cross this stormy event in my life? The doctor tells him 50%, 10%, 90%. What does 90% mean? That the doctor had 100 patients or 1,000 patients like him in the clinic, and 10 survived it, 10% survived it, and 90 died, or the opposite. It's statistics. But the patient keeps on asking the doctor, doctor, I have a name. My name is XYZ, and I have an ID number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm living in street ABCD number 4. And I have a history, I have a biography, I was learning in university, I have a profession, I have a friend. What are my chances to cross it? No answer. No answer, not because the doctor is ignorant, because medicine simply didn't know. With the new tools, we are going to know. And I want to bring you an example to this one. Until now, the canonical, the old medicine was like a car. Remember, you have a car and you are living in a cold country or in a wet country, and the car doesn't turn on in the morning, and the reason can be numerous. So the name of the disease is the car doesn't turn on. But the reason can be that you forgot the lights and the battery is empty, or you forgot to put gas and the gas tank is empty, or you didn't notice that the red light is blinking and you didn't put oil into the oil tank, and the barrels and the cylinders are stuck in the barrels. Or it was a rainy day and the sparks got wet. So if you change the battery but you have no gas, the car will still not ignite. And the same for if you put oil but the battery is empty, the car will still will not light, will not turn on. So we need to go to the reason, and the reason is buried basically in the DNA, the mutated DNA, the DNA that was damaged due to irradiation, due to air pollution. And of course, the mutations in the DNA leads to mutations in RNA and in proteins. I promised you not to use any technological jargon, so I'll stop at that point. But we are going to look for the reason of the disease. And the reason can be numerous. And we now know, for example, that breast cancer can be caused by 20 different reasons. So of course, if we jump on the patient with chemotherapy and radiotherapy and remove the breast and so on, the patient may be cured, but this is not fair. It's a cruel treatment. We need to pinpoint to understand the reason, like when with the forceps, take it away with a very gentle treatment. So this is the modern medicine. The modern medicine turns its mirror from treating the disease first to profiling the patient first, understanding the mutation, the reason behind the disease, and only then treat the patient. So we take a sample of the DNA, we can take it from the cheek, and we analyze it, and then we are doing other tests. I don't want to, it's very superficial what I'm telling you now, but we are going deeply to understand exactly why the car doesn't turn on in the morning. But this will necessitate also huge changes in the three definitions that are actually the pillars of old medicine: disease, patient, and treatment. Isn't it? Aren't these the three pillars? The disease is going to change from the old view that you are seeing now of the doctor that is coming to talk to the patient and put his hand and measuring the pulse, or put it on the forehead and senses the fever, to a medicine that may not care much about the feelings of the patient, but will care much about the profiling, the chemical profiling of the patient. And it's not only the DNA, as I said, it's the RNA and the protein. So the disease definition is going to change, and instead of saying you have cancer, they will say you have a mutation in P53 gene where amino acid number 273 was changed with another amino acid. And what about some ethical issues? You know, cancer has biomarkers. What about diseases that we can diagnose 5 years before they evolve, before they erupt? We have now such sensitive tools. I may carry now a mutation for Alzheimer or for cancer, and the disease is still not there. The disease will develop in 10 years or 20 years down the road. So let's say that I'm walking today into the hospital for something, and they sequence my DNA, and they tell me, Aaron, the reason that you walked into the hospital, you had fever, you thought you may have corona, you thought you may have heart attack, doesn't matter, you are okay. But we sequence your DNA, and you are prone to have Alzheimer or depression, or I don't know, in 20 years. What you are going to do with this information? You are going to tell your wife about it. She may stick with me, my wife. I want to believe so, at least. But are you going to tell your employer that may not want to employ you anymore? Maybe not in the Technion, which is a public institution. They may not fire me, but a private employer will not hesitate for a minute. What about the insurance company that may revoke your policy? What about your children that may be carriers of the gene and they're still young and haven't started their life? So you see, the issue of modern medicine fits exactly what we always know, but we didn't apply, we didn't implement into the right context. There are no free lunches. The advances in technology carry a heavy price toll with them. The patient is going to be different. Why to wait for the disease to be treated? If I can genetically manipulate the embryo and treat the embryo and change the DNA ahead of time. Just today in Sweden, two awfully talented ladies, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, a German, well, Charpentier, she is French originally, but she's now in Germany, and Jennifer Doudna from Berkeley University in the United States got the Nobel Prize for a technology that is called gene editing. They developed a technology by which I can repair the DNA. I can change the mutation. This by itself has a lot of potential, but also a lot of dangers. You know, treating a disease and avoiding a disease is one maybe justified reason. But maybe that the mother would like to change the hair color of the child. Maybe she wants him to be tall, to be muscular, to be a basketball player. You may ask me what's wrong with that the mother wants the child to be a basketball player? It's very wrong. Because I think that this violates the freedom of the newborn and of the growing child to decide for himself. Why should the mother decide on his future? You know, we are enjoying the fact that we are free. I picked up my profession. Nobody forced me to do what I do. This is the essence of life. So think just about that. And there are many other moral aspects to the gene editing technology. And now ethical committees are sitting and banning misuse of this technology. And of course, the treatment, as I said, is going to be different. You see here how we can, with a forceps, pick up a mutated piece of the DNA of the double helix, insert a different one instead of it, and got rid of the disease. And just yesterday, there was a report that the patient was cured from a disease, a genetic disease. So it's the first time that we can handle genetic disease called sickle cell anemia. It's a disease where the red blood cells are sickling and it leads to occlusion of blood vessels. I will not go into the disease, but the technology has been already to being used in order to treat patients with it, but we need to go and to walk very slowly so we shall not violate fundamental basic rules of society. But again, the issue of genetic privacy and the leakage of it, for example, the fact that I have carrying a gene for Alzheimer should be kept in confidentiality, but it will leak, no doubt. Be prepared for the big genome leak. It is going to leak. Computers are being hacked and the information is so. Again, the issue, what should be kept? To whom it belongs? Does the information that on my genome should be kept in the computer of the hospital or should be erased from the computer of the hospital? These are all open questions, and the society needs to deal with them. So you see that I kind of tried in a marathon run to tell you that COVID-19 and modern medicine are not just syringes, vaccines, CAT scan, MRI, and doctors that is talking not an illegible language. It has also to do with us, the customers of the system, the patients, with many ethical issues that should take into consideration our background, our beliefs, our prejudice, our history, our tradition, and so on and so forth. And I think that Angelina Jolie symbolizes more than anything else this modern medicine. A few years ago, she came with the announcement that she's going to remove her 2 breasts. Later on, she came with the announcement that she's going to take her 2 ovaries. And the reason was that her mother died of ovarian cancer. Her aunt, the sister of the mother, died of breast cancer, and she realized that she may carry a mutated gene called BRCA1, BRCA1, and that endangers her. It's a ticking bomb that threatens her to contract 1 or 2 of those diseases, and she decided to take a preemptive step to remove these organs. Luckily, it depends how you look at it, breast and ovaries are removable, but brain cancer and Alzheimer, we cannot prevent. The brain is not a removable organ. So you see that the issue is rather complicated. Let me just tell you in the last 2 minutes, I still have 2 minutes. The last chapter of this talk, which is more personal, and this was carried out in my own laboratory, and I don't bring it because I'm so proud of my laboratory. Of course, I'm proud of my laboratory, but as an example of a research that is being carried out in the Technion, I happened to found the Technion Integrated Cancer Center, and I'm researching cancer for many years now. Based on our discovery, the original discovery that I made as a student with Professor Hershko and Professor Rose, many drugs have been developed to treat cancer, but they have not been developed by the Technion, and all the billions of dollars are going to the pharma companies that develop them. And we changed a little bit route. The Technion is now much more aware of commercialization, of owning its own intellectual property. There is a special authority in the Technion that owns it, so the Technion will not lose any of its future potential assets. And what a very talented, we have a very unique program in the Faculty of Medicine that is called the MD PhD program. The students are spending 12 years in the medical school doing both medical degree and a doctorate in sciences. One of those talented students happened to be my student, Ido Livne. He's now graduated already, and he finished up. He's still in the lab, just wrapping up. And he developed an anti-cancer drug. And it's not a drug, actually. It's a natural compound. I cannot go into details. But you see here, what you see here are tumors, real tumors. These are human tumors that are being grown in mice. So we take mice that have a compromised immune system, so they can take a human tissue and grow them. So we are using it as a surrogate mother. We cannot implant the tumor into the human being, so we implant it into mice as a surrogate mother, and instead of pregnancy, they develop tumors. And you can see that the tumor that was treated, was injected around it with a mixture of these natural products, is much smaller, significantly smaller. Then we said, this is a natural product that we eat anyway. We just have to give it in a little bit of high concentration. Why not to give it in the drinking water? So we gave it in the drinking water and the same result. We don't have even to inject it. It's not a chemotherapy. It's not irradiation. We use a chemical that you are, all of us, me and you, are eating daily. We just change concentration. We flip around, we play around, we tinker with the diet, and bang, it goes. So what is the trick here? You know, I'm not a magician, so it's all about science at the end of the day. The trick here is that what we realized, and we know, and everybody knows, that tumor cells, cancers, are always hungry. They go very quickly. They need nutrients, so they have to suck it from the environment, but they grow much faster than the nutrients can get there. So they're always under stress. They're always under stress. You know, they pull blood vessels behind them, but the blood vessels don't grow fast enough in order to feed them. So tumor cells are always hungry and are always under stress. And they try to eat everything that is available to them. Now, what is hunger? Now, let's think a little bit philosophically. If I have good donuts here around me, and I take two of them, I'll do it later on.
We do it together.
We'll do it together, yes, alone. After eating two of them, I believe that I will not want the third one. Why? Because I feel full. What is feeling full? Feeling full is a term that is not in the Oxford Dictionary. It's not a biological term. In the body, it's a signal. It comes from the brain, and it tells me you have enough sugar, you have enough protein, don't eat more. It's really a signal. It's translated into a biological signal. The same for this water in the bottle. I'm now thirsty, I'll drink half of the bottle, and my brain will tell me, don't drink more, you had enough. Actually, I cannot even drink more. I will force myself to drink more if I need, but not much more. There is a signal. What we did here, we discovered a signal of hunger, and we push the button and we tell the cells, don't eat, you are full. Don't eat, you are full. And they stop eating and they are dying of hunger. We simply starve them to death by fooling them to think that they are full, to think that they don't need to eat. But basically they are hungry. But we signal to them, don't eat, don't eat. Think about you are driving a car. I'm sorry for bringing you all these stupid metaphors about car. And the gas gauge is broken, and it shows you that the tank is full. What will happen to you? You'll stop in the middle of the road because you were fooled to think that the tank is full, but meanwhile, you consumed all the fuel, and here you go, you are stuck. That's what we are doing. We fool them by telling them that the gas gauge is in the full point, but basically, they have consumed everything they have, and they don't suck from the environment anymore. We are commercializing it. We are starting very soon clinical trials already in our hospital, in our neighboring hospital, Rambam in Ichilov, also in China. And I cannot tell you that I'm optimistic. I want to believe that I'm cautiously optimistic that we are coming to one solution. Cancer will never be treated by a single drug. Forget about it. We shall always need an armamentarium, a battery of drugs. It's a very sophisticated disease. It always fools you. If you lock the window, it will come from the door. If you lock the door and the window, it will come out of the electric outlet. It will come anywhere. So the disease is very smart. It changes itself all the time. But we believe that in a year, we shall be able to add another very useful armamentarium weapon against this devastating disease that, remember, is the #1 killer. It's not COVID-19. Cancer is the #1 killer in Western countries. It has not taken a sabbatical. It's not off in Hanukkah, and we still have to handle it. Thank you very much, and happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much for this fascinating talk, and I'm sure that our audience is appreciating the efforts, and we see lots of questions coming in. And actually, I would like to follow on your last sentence. This is a question coming from our very dear Tony Bernstein from London. Will the world put the same resources into finding the cure for cancer as they did finding the cure for COVID-19. And I think you touched a little bit about this, but if you can
Yeah, it's
give
a
us
very
your
interesting
thoughts.
question. You can ask the same question about Alzheimer, about anything. No, the answer is not. Of course, we need more money. Money is always in short. But the obstacles are obstacles of knowledge. You cannot develop a drug without understanding the mechanism. We still think about Alzheimer, think about brain diseases, dementias, which is the biggest issue behind the corner. Because as older we get, we are more prone to brain disease. We don't understand memory. We don't understand loss of memory. And the same is for cancer. We are making a head-on progress in cancer. A huge progress has been done in the last 2 decades. Immune therapy, our drugs changed completely the landscape, the clinical landscape of several malignant diseases that were fatal until our system came to the world. But we need to overcome knowledge obstacles, and this takes time. What will facilitate it is, of course, more transparency. If scientists were a little bit less selfish and more transparent and collaborate with one another and build the information banks that everybody could enter and not keep it for themselves, this would facilitate it. That knowledge that accumulated in Boston, in New York, in Oxford, in Cambridge, in Tokyo, will be available to everybody rather than, but I understand also the need to conceal because you are competing on the same pool of money. You're competing on intellectual property. You want to make the billions of dollars made out of drugs. But I think that there are ways in between to be more transparent and nevertheless to protect your property. But money by itself is not the issue.
So in other words, you're saying there's no shortcuts. If you go too fast, you're leaving a big void behind you.
Exactly. No, you cannot jump. You cannot jump. You cannot jump over 3 stairs. Think about you are climbing a staircase. You cannot jump 4 stairs. You need to go one by one by one.
So let me challenge you about this COVID vaccine now, that they are actually implementing methods that were never tested
right,
before.
But the method was there.
And it's in 1 year, aren't we leaving a big void there?
Amazing. The development of the vaccine against COVID is amazing, but all the technology was known. It was on the shelf. It was not used for this purpose, but it was known. It was known. Think about that you don't have cars. Nobody has a car, okay? But you have the wheel, and you have engine, and you have lights, and you have batteries, and you have and then you said, okay, now I need to make something that will take me to Tel Aviv 10 times faster than riding a horse. Everything is there. Somebody will come to the idea, let's just put them together.
So it was just a question of synthesis.
Exactly. The messenger RNA, by the way, the AstraZeneca technology is different than Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna. It's different. They use a viral vector. It doesn't matter. It's different. But all the technologies were on the shelf. The issue was to say, let's try and assemble them and see whether it's working. They didn't know that it's going to work. But they didn't have to discover new technology. Therefore, now I'm 10 times more optimistic than I was even 9 months ago because it's already working. But even 9 months ago, I was optimistic because I knew people developed vaccines. They vaccinated against polio, against mumps, against rubella, against plague, against, the technology was there. COVID will be out soon.
Before this event started, you and I chatted a little bit about the vaccine. You told me about an event that's going to happen next week, I think in Rambam.
Yeah, well,
it's part of the audience in London.
Yeah, it's. I was just told this afternoon. A friend called me from Rambam Hospital. It has to do with the public trust. It's a very serious conversation. We joked, but basically it was very serious.
It goes to the biblical story.
One of the issues that people don't trust, not only black people don't trust. Everybody in my lab asked me, should I take the vaccine or not? And these are very intelligent graduate students of the Technion, even physicians, even the medical community in Israel, only 70% will take it. Or they say that they will take it. I believe that at the end it will be more. So you have to gain public trust. How do you do it? By volunteering. So the Israeli has a very courageous prime minister, awfully courageous. So he said that he and the Minister of Health will come on prime time to the television. That's what they like, prime time. Otherwise, there would have been nothing.
Well, because of the election.
And they will bring a nurse with them or a doctor that will give them the shot. Gaining the public, well, let's don't take it so humoristically. The purpose is to gain the public trust, but maybe not everybody will look at it. So in the hospitals in Israel, they decided to take prominent doctors and so on, and to make a show, and to bring journalists, and television reporters and so on. So our big hospital, which is the main teaching hospital of the Technion, Rambam decided to do the same. So they invited me to take the shot almost either next week and I volunteered immediately. Why not? I want to get rid. Where is the mask? The hell mask. I want to get rid of the mask. I don't want to be limited. I want to talk to my friends. I want to fly. Yes, I'm jumping into it.
There's a question coming from David. What is the most challenging question in medicine nowadays?
Well, it's hard to answer, but I think that heart diseases will be defeated. Think about, there are two types of diseases. There are, or three types of diseases. There are diseases of installation of the tubing system, and that's the heart. It's the pump, the tubing. We can replace it. We cannot replace hearts so easily. We still need to transplant. All the attempts to build pumps, artificial pumps, failed because the fluid and the cells in the blood are very sensitive to materials, to the touch of metal and to the pumping force. But we know a lot. We know imaging today. You can go into the arteries, you can open it, you can do stenting, you can do a lot of things. So heart diseases, people are dying of heart disease, but less and less so. And I think that we are on the way. Cancer, I think we have made a huge progress. We are not on, the solution is not there yet. It's a very complicated disease, but I mentioned immune therapy. I mentioned the drugs that were developed not by us, but based on our discovery. Cancer will be defeated. People are now, the purpose is maybe not to cure it, but to make it a chronic disease. Like we are living with hypertension, with high blood pressure. We are living with diabetes now for decades. We are living with AIDS for decades. People are not cured from AIDS, but they can live for decades with it. So instead of curing, the physicians are using a term that is called chronicize. We are making the disease from acute to chronic. Brain is the challenge. We understand nothing about it. Nothing, almost nothing. We understand the chemical composition, but from here to passion, to imagination, to memory, to the ability to invent, to paint, to sculpt, to design, to plan, to love. What is it all about? Zero, goose egg. We are not there. Now, why it's all related to diseases? What do we care about love? We love. We care about diseases. No, it's important to know, because in Alzheimer, we lose memory. So in order to understand why we lose it, we first have to understand it. If we shall not understand what is memory, we shall never be able to take care of it. So it's essential that we shall understand first the healthy state. What is it that is going in this wonderful, unbelievable organ? So I think that brain diseases and aging of the brain is really the heaviest challenge. Not only that, it's going to be the number one challenge once heart diseases and cancer will be defeated, because we are all going to suffer from it. If you operate now on my brain, if God forbid I die in a minute, and you'll operate on my brain, you find already the seeds of my Alzheimer, the degeneration. So what's happening to, there is a funny so-called definition in medicine that you are dying with a disease rather than from the disease.
Yes.
And this is the state. People are dying with prostate cancer than from prostate cancer. And if we take and just autopsy people that are dying, you will find numerous mutations and diseases and so on and so forth. But we die before they get overt, before they get symptomatic. And as longer we live, and we are going to live longer, and now we live longer than we lived 150 years ago or 100 years ago. 100 years ago, we lived on the average 50 years. We didn't die of cancer 100 years ago because we didn't live long enough to get cancer. We didn't die of Alzheimer 100 years ago in 1901, 120 years ago, at the turn of the 19th century to the 20th century, because we didn't live long enough to get brain diseases or to get heart diseases. We died of infectious diseases. So what we did, think about it on a timeline. We defeated infectious diseases. We developed imaging, X-ray and MRI, and we elongated life by 30 or 35 years, from 50 to 35 to 85. And lo and behold, we have cancer and we have heart diseases, and we have brain diseases. We exposed them. They were underneath not that people didn't die at that time from cancer. Yes, they died, but very few lived long enough to get it. And all of a sudden, modern medicine, that's what we deal with. Go to Rambam Hospital, you'll see that 90% of the people are suffering from chronic diseases, from metabolic diseases, diabetes, that leads to heart diseases, from brain diseases, from cancer. Now we build for cancer hospitals for themselves. You know, it's not in a general hospital. We build the Dana-Farber, we build MD Anderson in the United States. Rambam is building a huge oncology institute, a whole building, just to handle cancer patients.
So in other words, the challenge is rather than to live longer, than to die healthy, sort of to say.
Right, right. This
so
is
have a high quality,
challenge.
have a high quality of life, and then
at the end of the day, we are dying more or less. If we are okay, we are dying more or less at the same age. Even the guy that marathons every day, he will not make it longer than 90, 92, whatever. Very few make it to the centenarians. But he's dying in a much better shape, and he doesn't suffer in the last years of his life. And he's not a burden on the economy, and he's not a burden on the shoulders of his family. Exactly.
Aaron, I think you touched a little, many aspects in your talk about this. So what was the role of science and engineering in the modern medicine? This is a question came from
This
Harry.
is a Technion this is a question that pertains mostly to the Technion. Science and medicine and technology are interwoven. We cannot move. Think about what happens in medicine. X-ray is engineering, right? Röntgen, the invention, first Nobel Prize in physics, 1901. CAT scan, MRI. Vaccine is science. It's biological technology. We cannot move without technology. Let it be hardcore, nuts and bolts, X-ray, imaging, irradiation. What is irradiation? What is radioactive irradiation if not technology? We had to discover isotopes. We had to concentrate it. We had to develop a beam that will irradiate. We have to measure it. We have to quantify it. It's all technology. It's all technology. And therefore, there is no medicine without technology. We saw it these days with the vaccine. It's all technology. True, it's biological technology, but it's a technology.
Well, surgery will probably still performed by
automatic
barbers.
Surgery. People are now operating with the Da Vinci, with the robot.
Yeah. Or
completely
without the technology of
or the stenting.
Yeah.
Metals, material sciences. We are able to put little tiny drills or cameras into our intestine in order to have a view of the entire intestine to discover tumors and so on and so forth. And I think that in that sense, the Technion is unique in Israel, but maybe in the world, having everything concentrated under one umbrella. Faculty of Medicine, faculties of Sciences, Chemistry, Physics, Biology, faculties of Engineering, Computer Sciences, Data Sciences, Electric Engineering, and so on and so forth. And I think that the president is not here, but the president has now launched a human health program that is basically an integration of all this under one umbrella in order to come with better knowledge, but mostly with better products to benefit humankind.
Yeah, no doubt without technology, surgery would be still performed by barbers.
It's like Siamese twins, inseparable.
Aaron, thank you so much. I think it was a fascinating evening. And from the Technion here in Haifa, I wish you all good night and good luck. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Back to you, London.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Alan Aziz, and I'm the CEO for Technion UK, and I'm very proud to represent the Technion in this country. As you know, tonight is our annual fundraising event, and we are raising funds for the First Steps program of the Technion. This program seeks to recruit top scientists in Israel and also help return back to Israel visiting academics who are now situated amongst the most prestigious institutions around the world. These people represent the brightest minds of the scientific community, and the Technion is the institution in Israel best placed to house them. This program is costly, as it seeks to set up laboratories, equipment, and staff for these people. So please, we ask you to be as generous as you can tonight and in a few moments you'll see on your screens the various ways through which you can donate to this project. Thank you very much.